I'm back. I love retro video games. I, however, don't love the price. So, for this video, what I thought I'd do is we're going to compare 3 separate video game consoles that I purchased for myself. All 3 of them are emulation consoles. And we're going to see what offers what I believe is the best value for your dollar. Probably should mention I'm talking about Canadian dollars here, as I am a proud Canadian. Our first contestant in this game, the GS5, otherwise known as the Gamestation 5. With very creaky packaging, this thing came from Amazon to me, plug and play, for $10 Canadian. Our next console, the Super Console XCube, the retro video game console. With design cues, I think you know what it's from. Plug and play, 50 plus emulators, up to 50,000 games. You can add your own games, HDMI out, and 20 languages. This also was an Amazon buy. It cost me $49 Canadian plus tax. Last but certainly not least, the new Atari Gamestation Pro with a very big box, which is hard to hold up. HDMI, 2 fantastic wireless joysticks, a lot of RGB, comes with these classic games built in. The price? $139 Canadian plus tax. As there have been plenty of reviews of these 3 machines, I thought I'd just go into things that, well, that would interest me when I'm picking out one of them. So first of all, we have the GS5. So here it is. It is supposed to look like, what do you think, an original PlayStation 5 digital edition. It has pretty thick plastic. It weighs pretty much nothing. And if we look at the I/O, or what they call I/O, there is a power in. Let me show you there. DC in. There was a slot for micro SD for, I'm assuming, some models. AV out. There's no HDMI, no USB-C, any of that. And on the front, we just have the reset and the power, and some USBs for the joysticks. Or what they call a joystick, because this is what we have. It's extremely cheap plastic. I think a Kleenex weighs more than this. USB controller. So that is the GS5. For the Super Console XCube, what you have are some, indicator LEDs at the front. The shape is obviously reminiscent of an original NES. But in the back, you have a DC in. It comes with the power supply, not just a wire, which is fantastic. You have AV, HDMI, which is fantastic, and even a LAN connection, so you can update it or do really whatever you want with it from the back. So that is all the information on it. And it has the little SD card right here with games on it. So pretty cool. Now to control it, you have 4 USBs in the front. And those connect to 2 of these. So these are modeled after PS2 or PS3 controllers. I always mix it up. And to connect it, what you have to do is you get one of these with it. So this little dongle, which I'm sure you all appreciate me saying, plugs it just into one of these USBs, and it connects to both controllers because it comes with 2. Now these are a little, not much, better than the white ones with the GS5. They'll do, but you could also add in your own controllers should you wish. The Atari Gamestation Pro. This one is built very well. You can feel the heft. The design is fantastic. The power and home buttons feel great. Home button, or I should say the power button, is very clicky. An exciting thing they didn't mention when they advertise this is you can add in micro SDs, which they didn't tell you what it's for, but since then people discovered you can add in your own games. In the back, we have a reset, a 5-volt in to power it, and HDMI out. And that is pretty much it for this unit. Everything is pretty self-contained, and it is just, the build quality is the best out of these 3. And it comes with 2 of these. So these are the joysticks. They are wireless joysticks, Bluetooth, I believe. It's very clicky and a really cool thing. So you have your A button, your B button, C button, I'm assuming. And then you also have this for games that require a paddle. And it is an analog controller. It feels fantastic, and I can't say enough good things about it. It has one of these glowing circles here that you can turn on and off. I mean, it's up to you. You can turn it all white if you want. Same thing with these. So out of the build quality, I'd have to say this is top. But hey, you're paying for the build quality, right? And here we have the Atari Gamestation Pro made by MyArcade, as you can see here. Now, I should probably let you all know first, this seems to output, at least for the television I was using, it was reading it as 720p. Not entirely sure why. So we have the main menu. It boots up pretty much right away, and I've done a firmware update just to allow new things, like for some reason it was only releasing audio through one channel, so left or right. Now it's doing both, so it's stereo. But we come to this screen right here, and you can go through the list of Atari games. So there's quite a few from all the different generations. I'm using the controller wirelessly right now. It takes 4 AA batteries, which is considerable, if you ask me, but you also have the option of plugging in through USB Type-C. So we could pick a game. So let's try Asteroids for the 7800. On the left, we have all the information about the game when it was released, all that. We have an image of the box art, we have an image of the gameplay, and then the controls on the right. To start it, we press the A button, which is directly on the controller top left, and it should boot into the game. Now we can press select or start, press select, so we can change it. We'll put it at novice, because I'm sure I'm going to do super well no matter what. Press A. And I did the mistake of moving forward. So, again, it looks perfectly fine. You're not going to get super high definition on this kind of game, but it looks good to me. Everything's pretty responsive. The controller, I don't really notice any lag. And the gameplay is pretty much what you expect from a 7800 game. So that's that game. If we click the home button on the controller, we can get out of it, and then we press B, which is directly on top. We can also do things, my favorite part, are paddle games. So we can do Pong. Again, it tells you all about the game. We're all pretty familiar with Pong. Press A. Now, you'll notice on the right side of the screen, this little green thing here, that's me. I'm moving it right now with the analog paddle that they added to the controller. So all we have to do is press select. We can pick a game version we want. Apparently I'm winning already. And missing. But yeah, it's actually, again, Pong is not for everybody. Some people find it to be one of the most boring games. But it is a challenging game nonetheless. And I love any games that use this paddle controller. It is super comfortable, super easy to use. The way it glides is just fantastic. They really did their research and made it very well. Much better than my skill in this game. So let's get out of that. And we'll press B to escape this. B again. There are bonus games on this system. So we have 8-bit games, 16-bit. These are not necessarily Atari games. Depending on the game. So, for example, if we pick Galaxy Gunners, press A to start the game. Depending on the game, it's easy enough to use the added controllers, or the controllers that come with the system. So select, start, add a credit. You can also adding your own controllers. So people have used things like Xbox controllers, and they work just fine. The gameplay is fantastic. I love these arcade games. Some of my favorite games are arcade ports, which is always sound and look better, obviously, than the home console version. But yeah, it loads up right away. There's no waiting. There's really not too much to set up.
Now, if we get out of this again, you do have some options in your settings to your gameplay. So I have it set to original because I see absolutely no reason to stretch out a game like that. You have bezel art that you can add, so if you want it to be like a CRT TV or like an 80s synthwave kind of thing. You can add in scan lines, but I've yet to see any artificial scan lines that look good. They explain how to use a controller. There's an FAQ, and then you can see more information if you want to register for your updates. And there's the firmware version. I have updated the firmware just yesterday at the time of this recording. Now, there is one last trick that I'd like to show you. I mentioned previously in the video that there was a micro SD expansion on this device, and they say it's for, you know, save game states and all that. But an interesting thing you're about to see right here. So once we let the device load up, as you see now it says you have a micro SD card mounted. So we could either mount the local storage or what's on the micro SD card. If we click micro SD, click A, it will take about a minute. It's not the fastest. It will check to see what's on the card. But we can go through the list. So, adventure. And it always does this weird thing, at least when I copy over some of the games that I own to this, that it adds in extra numbers or just sometimes just doesn't load. So we'll try adventure again. There we go. We click start, and we're playing one of my other games that I have a copy of it. Now, at this point, most things work. I have noticed, you know, paddle games don't work, but you can add in other controllers. Maybe there is a way to do it. I've yet to figure out how to get a paddle working on this. But there you are, as I'm doing a miserable time here, and press home to get out of it. Now, if you say, oh, I want to go back to the console, you just turn it off, press the power button again. We'll load back into the OS. It's going to show us our splash screen. We'll give it a second. It's probably going to do this, and we'll say no, we want to stay on local storage. Again, it seems to have emulators for a lot of different consoles, which was a fantastic thing to find. So if you're looking just maybe to add in your own, all you got to do is get an SD card, get the ROMs that you legally own, put them on the card, make sure you name them in the correct way. There's a whole video I've seen that I could probably link below that talk about it, and you're off to the races. So that's the Atari Gamestation Pro. Our next console, the Super Console XCube. So I have just powered it on, and as you can see, literally it's just running a version of Emulation. So they have programmed this themselves. They put it into a little plastic box that looks like an NES. And when you load it up, it shows this splash screen. I'll let you enjoy this fantastic artwork, which actually, as sarcastic as I sound, it's pretty good. So you see, there we go, and it ends at the Kinhank Games Retro. Now we're not done loading though. You have to give it another minute. So it's loading the system configuration, and as you see, we have the logo, and you will see all the different systems it's slowly, or emulators, it can run. Or at least it can run in its natural state of being programmed by the sellers on Amazon. Pretty quick. When I plug this into one of my televisions, it shows up as 1080p 60. So that's pretty good. Again, for about $50 Canadian, so that's what, 30 something US, and it loads up right away. So we have all the games. I'm just gonna show you the different systems that we have. Now, there are more games in some systems and less in others. Now, the reason I'm assuming they did this is, well, maybe some systems are a little more hard to emulate with this hardware, but there's also the simple fact that you can only fit so much onto an SD card. or at least an SD card that came with this. So I believe this was a 64 gigabyte SD card. But yeah, it has a lot of systems, a few that I've never really seen or heard of, but mostly it's like 8-bit on up. You'll have some older ones as well, some handhelds, some computers. That's awful. There you go. So if we go into favorites, it will eventually load. So I did not put these as my favorites because I don't think I would pick Maths Algebra Disc 1. But you can go in and check out some of the things that the sellers thought people would enjoy the most. But if we go to something pretty simple, there we go. Sega Genesis, we can load Sonic the Hedgehog, and it loads pretty quickly. And it still takes a few seconds, as you saw. It lets us know that both joysticks, or both controllers, are configured with that one dongle. I'll say it again. Press the start button. You'll load it as one player. Go straight to the game. Now, it's a little sluggish depending on the game and what you've been doing with it. I find that after you've been using the system for a while, it tends to... you could feel heat on top of it. But it does okay with the emulation of the games. So if you want to get out, press start and select together. And you're back at all the games. Now, I'm not going to go through everything. I've also modified this a little because this is a highly... you can change the options on how it's visually showing. I mean, it's a whole operating system that they put on here. If you press to the right, you could just go through the games if you want. I've added in the images of all the games on the right. So we could pick whatever we want. So if you want to pick a very old arcade game, we press B. Once again, it's going to go to the screen letting you know it's loading. And there we go. Now, if you want to load something a little more high-end, we could try Nintendo 64. I found with this, some games work okay, and then sometimes they just kind of like fizzle out, I guess you could call it, as you're trying to load them. Not entirely sure why. I know N64 is very hard to emulate. So let's try Mario Kart 64. This one I've had sometimes issues that it'll semi-load and then just hang. There you go. Thank you. And we'll just, quickly go through this. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right in the game. Now, I'm going to admit, I'm not the biggest N64 fan. But Mario Kart is Mario Kart. Everything is already programmed to a specific button, so if I press the top right trigger, I'm jumping around. I'm playing with the thumbsticks, or the joysticks. I can also play with this D-pad, so everything seems to work just fine. Really not much lag at all. Press, bottom trigger, bottom left trigger, you can launch your items. And there you go. So it works perfectly fine. And we can get out of that. And go back, hopefully, to the menu. There you go. So, I bought, I believe this was the 64 gigabyte capacity. You also could do things You could change things. You can start at RetroArch. You can boot from the NAND. There is other things on this. Nothing that most people are going to probably use. And yeah, that's pretty much here. If we go into, like, let's see the menus here, we can adjust things. So we can filter by text. We can sort games by the file name. We can change everything. We can change the way it looks, the game's metadata, all that. But honestly, I've set it up the way that I actually like the way it looks. I like the way it works. You also have the option to add in your own controllers, and you would have to set them up. It's a tedious process, but people can do it. And you could also add in your own games. Really, all you have to do is, if you copy over the SD card to another SD card of a larger capacity, you can then add in more games that you obviously legally own. So that is the Super Console XCube. We are hooked up to the GS5. Let's power this beast on. And we're on. So that took all of half a second at most. Now it's the 201 console. And I should probably... There we go. You could scroll through the games. As you can see, there are definitely real games at the beginning. But as we go through, you might notice that it slowly starts to change. Garden War, Mad Christmas, Robot, everyone's favorite game. So there's a lot of weird ROMs mixed into this thing. So here's the entire game list. I'll just keep going. Hope you're writing this all down. And there we go. So let's start off with Mario 3. So you press start. First of all, the colors look awful. It looks a little stretched as well to fit in a 16:9 pretty much. And we'll click the one-player game. This controller, this little white dinky controller, is horrible to use. It feels like I'm holding nothing at all. Everything looks super flat, or super stretched, I should say. The game is working, we'll call it. And it's Mario 3, but not a fun version. I definitely feel the lag when I'm playing. So to get out of this, we press reset. And we're back to beginning. Now, if we go into some of the weird games, I've never heard of Chack and Pop, so we'll click start. Which one am I? I'm assuming I'm the one that just fell down. These are awful games. We'll get out of this. But there is a theme to this. Cheap. This looks awful. The included games, except for a handful, are ones that I've never heard of. And they're just terrible. I don't know if I'd like to play this longer than 2 minutes. The audio is only on one channel because it's either right or left. There's only a single audio out. The video is grainy because, again, these are RCA cables that it connects to. It is just not a good gameplay experience. The only positive thing is it came with the controllers, but again, these controllers, I'm sure if you pop them open, there's at most a tiny little board with a wire running to it. It feels cheap, and it is just awful. And there you have it. Those are the 3 retro emulation consoles that I purchased pretty recently. Now, all 3 of them have their draws, and they have setbacks. So here are my final thoughts on each console. Let's start off with the GS5. The positives, the look. I mean, yeah, it's kind of fun to have something this small. I'll show you with the size of my hand there. That emulates or copies, obviously, a PlayStation 5. The negative things, there's too many to list. First of all, this is super cheap and it shows in the build quality. It has only USB interface. It loads instantly because you cannot add games. Everything is on the system. The games themselves are just awful. There's only a handful of NES games. And at $10, this is probably $9 too much to pay. So for this one, I say do not buy. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the Gamestation Pro. Now, the things I love about this, first of all, the design. My Arcade did a fantastic job with this. With the design, they give you RGB if you want that. The buttons are fantastic. It has right here USB-C in the front, so you can add in USB-C controllers if you want. In the back, you have the USB-C for power, you have a reset, the HDMI. In the bottom, you have these rubber feet. But the best part of this one is right over here, is you can add in your own games, which they did not even advertise. Another fantastic thing for this is the controller. Now, it really depends on the game you're playing, but this is a very high quality controller. I like to use it. Absolutely love this paddle. The whole thing is fantastic. 200 games included, all legally licensed, which is, for a lot of people, that is a #1 priority. And technically you can add in your own games, like I said, through the micro SD. You're also going to get long-term support, probably, because they've done it so far, through firmware updates. So, this is a fantastic device. The only negatives I would see about this are the price. At $139 Canadian, this was a pretty difficult decision for me. I do enjoy it. I am glad I got it, but I see something like this being more around the $100 Canadian mark. Our final device, the Super Console XCube. The things I love about this, the design, obviously. I love this old NES-inspired design. I love that you can add in your own controllers. It comes with the 2 controllers. They're not exactly fantastic, as you saw before, but you can do a lot of different things with this. You can set this up the way you want, where the other consoles, not so much. It has expansion right there with micro SD that you can add in your own games. The LAN, the HD out, 1080p HD out. Everything about that is fantastic. This is a great choice. One of my other favorite things is the price. So at the time that I bought this, it came out to about $49 Canadian with the taxes. That is a steal of a deal. If you're the kind of person who just wants to play retro games and doesn't need or doesn't want to have to set things up themselves, this is a great choice. Now, as to the legality of all these ROMs that are on that, I can't speak to that. Do I think all these companies released versions of this game or licensed them out to the company that makes this, Kinhank? More than likely not. But if you're looking just for a small gift, it is holiday time right now, and you want to give somebody the gift of gaming, this is a great option. And those are my final thoughts on these 3 retro game emulation consoles. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.